Hello and welcome back to Misrepresented. I'm your host, Lee Sophie, and today I'm so excited because we have the beautiful Zoe McGrady here with us, all the way from New York. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me, and excited to be in Miami right now instead of cold New York.
Oh my gosh, I bet it's like freezing over there.
Yes, I think we're going back to pretty cold tomorrow.
Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe your flight will get delayed.
One can hope.
Right. So before we get started, we have to shout out PinkApple Dresses for dressing us today.
Yes.
We're loving this blue vibe. Yours is like giving Versace. I love it.
I know. I love it too.
It's so cute. So I just found out that we're both from Virginia.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What was it like growing up in Virginia?
It was an interesting experience. I was actually adopted, so
What?
yeah,
I didn't
so
know that. Oh my gosh.
yeah, so and I have to preface that because everyone sees my parents like, wait, what? So I was adopted by two white people, and I'm
Mhm.
obviously a mixed woman, and so is my sister, who was also adopted. So
Wow.
we grew up in a pretty small, all-white town in the South, so it was just kind of weird. We were always like the people were staring at, like they didn't know what was going on as far as our family dynamics, and just being one of the few people of color down there just made things a bit difficult at times. And for me, especially, like being black, being interested in STEM and science and math and stuff, I just was always kind of the black sheep of my hometown.
Wow.
So
I
excited.
mean, I can relate to that because I moved to Virginia from Colorado when I was like 11, and Colorado's a lot more diverse.
Yes.
I'm half Japanese, and it's like they've never seen Asian people before, so they were not ready. I was so bullied. But I feel like being bullied made me want to like prove them wrong and work a little harder, and it gave us thick skin so we can do what we do now, right?
I know. The funny part is I wasn't bullied because I was the only female on the high school wrestling team. So people knew not
They
to
don't
mess
with
with
you.
me. But I was definitely like an outcast. Like I wasn't the one they were inviting to parties. Like there were so many times like friends ditched me, and I just wasn't like I never had my circle of people. So that was like where I was like, okay, I'm just kind of this loner. And yeah, I'm gonna prove people wrong. It's like you don't want to accept me now. I was trying to thrive. I did well in school and I was playing all these sports, but it just kind of seemed like people wanted to keep me down and like keep me on their
Wow.
level. So I was like, yeah, we're going to prove them wrong.
Yeah. So growing up, like, what was your childhood dreams? Like, when people ask you, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, what would you say?
So I said I wanted to be Albert Einstein. Like I dressed up like him for many Halloweens, like
Wait,
far too many.
That's so cool.
Which is also probably I didn't have any friends, but so I just knew I always wanted to do something in the math science field, and I wanted to change the world. That was my viewpoint. I was like, oh, if he can do it, so can I.
Yeah.
And as I got older, though, and I went in high school and I was studying and whatnot, and then I was choosing where to go to school, and then I got accepted to Duke, and I was like, okay, what majors do they offer? And I was also like, what's the hardest thing that I can do? Like, let's really push myself. And it was obviously engineering. And then within that, I chose to do mechanical engineering.
That is crazy. And they have a 6% acceptance rate.
Yeah.
So that is huge.
It was technically lower for the regular admission, which is what I did. So it was like
Wow.
5%.
Oh my gosh, Zoe, that's amazing. So what was like the application process like? Like, what all did you have to do to get into Duke? Give us some advice.
Yeah, I think, well, as far as advice, like you really have to think about it from like middle school, elementary school, if you that's like the path you want to take. And funny enough, I was never like, oh my god, I'm gonna go to Duke. I didn't know what Duke was. Even before I stepped foot on campus. Like I didn't quite understand what kind of school it was. I didn't know anyone who went there. I just knew that if I was gonna do well in school, like I wanted to make sure I was setting myself up to go to like the best school I can.
Wow.
So obviously getting straight A's throughout high school, but I also did a number of sports like wrestling, cheerleading, shot put. I went to States for a few things, and then I like worked part-time, did a couple clubs. Like I was like, let me make sure I'm really well-rounded. And I did good on my test scores, but it's not like I was perfect scores. But places like Duke, especially in like the top schools, like they don't want someone who's just good on paper. Like you really have to be good at school and driven, but they want to see people who are diverse and people who are going to be able to add value to campus. Because then once you're on there, like, yeah, I was joining other teams. Like I still had my engineering stuff that was going on. I got good grades with that, obviously, but the fun stuff was all the clubs that I was leading and all the activities you take part in.
Wow. So how did you feel when you got into Duke? What was that like?
It was weird because, as I said, I straight up, like, I was like, oh, I got in, cool.
What?
I was like, I didn't know anyone. Well, I didn't know anyone who got in there, and it really wasn't until I stepped foot and like I told people I got in there, like, oh my god, Zoe, like that's amazing, you have to go. And like obviously going there was an amazing experience. But it was funny because I was salutatorian in my high school, so second, and the
Mhm.
guy who was valedictorian didn't get in. And he
Oh my
tried to tell
gosh.
people I only got in because I was a woman doing engineering. But like little did he know I didn't go into engineering school. I applied later. So I was just like, that gave me a bit of chip on my shoulder. I was like, okay, so
Wow.
we're gonna make sure we get this degree and we do it well. And yeah, I think and once I got to campus, I was like, this is amazing. I'm so glad and grateful to be there and that the people
Mhm.
saw something in me because again, when you apply, there was like 2 different essays I had to write. There was the SAT I had to take. There
Oh
was
my
the
gosh.
2 practice tests or subject tests you had to
Mhm.
take, and then there was an interview. So
Oh
like I got
wow.
to meet with someone face to face and be like, here's my story, and
Wow.
here's like why you should put me on campus, which is why I think that part of it, and we have the whole. We got rid of the affirmative action stuff. And I think I'm actually excited for the next generation because they no longer have to worry about this guided idea that we only got in because we're women or because we're people of
Mhm.
color. Like it's truly because of the adversity I faced as a woman and person of color, as well as like all the other stuff that you have to offer, is why you get into these schools and why we obviously graduate and stuff. So
I
it's
love
awesome.
that. And now you're in New York City. You're working as a product manager for a finance-based tech firm. So what brought you to New York City?
Getting laid off.
Wait, what?
Getting laid off during the pandemic from my first job. So mind you, I'm this
Okay.
woman. I'm like, I've done so well. I'm always followed the rules. I'm like, I get good grades. I get an engineering degree. I'm like, my life's set. Like that's how life's supposed to go.
Yeah.
And I get my first job out of college and I transitioned to finance. Like my first job out of college was like, we're going to teach you finance, which I loved. I was like, okay, cool. I've got my engineering degree and now I get to get paid to learn another subject.
Mhm.
And I actually really liked my job, but during the pandemic, they laid off, I think, 10% of the workforce on like a random Wednesday. I opened my phone to check my email to see if there's anything I had to do for like clients. And it was
Oh
like,
my
sorry,
gosh.
like, due to COVID, like your position's been eliminated.
Stop.
And it was crazy because for a minute I was like, oh my God, like I'm 24 without a job. Like I have
In the
what?
middle of a
In the middle
pandemic.
of a pandemic. But as fate has it, and we can talk about this later, but I just had read this book, The Happiness Advantage. It was like, keep a positive mindset. Like, that's how you thrive in life. And I
Mhm.
did. And within a month, I got hired by my company now because they're like, we also work in this niche finance area that I was previously working at.
Mhm.
Plus, you have an engineering degree. We're a tech company. This is great. And I was literally hired within a month. And then a year later, I moved to New York because it was still COVID time. So I got to work from Philly, get my New York salary.
Okay, that's nice.
and then got to move to New York, which like similar to Duke, I was like, oh, I don't need to go to New York. But like once I was there, I was like, wait, like this is where I was meant to be. Like I'm so happy to be
Wow.
here.
So what's a typical day like for you?
So I get to work from home a lot, which is nice. And then they kind of want us in 2 days a week. So day to day, we work with our clients, we work with big banks. I work with my
Mhm.
other product managers as well as our engineers to just, fine tune our product, look for ways to optimize, look for ways to automate things, which is, I think, a cool part about a product manager. Um, and then occasionally we work late hours just because we're working with different banks and stuff. So I also kind of like that because I'm more of a night owl. Like I would prefer to work my
Yeah.
12 to 8, 12 to 10 days versus like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Yeah, I can relate.
um, so I like that. And then, I mean, outside of that, like if I'm, need to take days off, we've got plenty of vacation days. I try to go to the gym and stuff after work,
Yeah.
but when it's cold, I get a little bit lazy.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, the weather makes me want to like stay inside and be cozy. But I guess that gives you time to do some modeling because you're also signed with like the best agency in the world, Wilhelmina, in 2 locations, New
Yes.
York and Miami.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, how did you get discovered?
So after I did my first pageant, Miss New York USA, and moving to New York, I'd been there for about a year, and people were like, "Wait, do you model?" And I was like, growing up in the South, like quite literally, no one was like, "Oh my God, are you a model?" Like,
Mm-hmm.
so being in New York, and I was like, "Oh wait, people think I model. Like, let me give this a go."
Yeah,
And the amazing thing about New York, and this is one of the things I think separates it from so many other cities, is everyone wants to help everyone.
I love that.
And once you start telling people like, oh, I'm a model, like photographers are like, oh, like you want to collaborate and shoot for free. Like I have other models connecting me with people and like wanting to give you advice. And
Wow.
so in my short little stint, like I was working with photographers, building my portfolio, learning how to model, accepting that I could model and that I was beautiful, and like even though I'm not a size 0, like I can still do this. And so I built up my book. I applied to a few agencies, didn't get anything back, and then I started booking gigs on my own via like casting networks and whatnot. And then a couple months later, Wilhelmina was having a swimsuit search, and my friend sent it to me and was like, you need to apply.
Wow.
And I was like, this is what I'm talking about, like the like people helping other people. And so I apply. I don't win the swim search, but they were like, do you want us to submit you to the sports and fitness division? And I was like, sure. And I got a call back from my agent, and he was like, okay, let's do this. So I've been with them for a couple months now.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Do you have any advice for people that want to get started in modeling? I feel like you gave us a pretty good like rundown, you know, just shoot, test, go to castings, but anything like that can really set you apart from everybody else?
Yes. Two things I would say is, one, you have to be proactive. It's not like someone's just going to come and like put it on your doorstep, especially not nowadays because it is so competitive. We have Instagram, we have so much access to so many things. But because of that, it's also way easier to build your portfolio, to connect with people, to connect with models, connect with photographers. So if it's something you're serious about, like you have to get out there, you have to be, you know, grinding. Like I was going to Brooklyn, I can't even tell you how many days a week for a few months to do shoots with photographers, which like Brooklyn's far from Manhattan, guys. Yeah. So like I was grinding and I wasn't getting paid for that. Like that's what I had to do to make sure I had a book to show people I was serious. And then the second thing I would say is just really understand and find your niche. Like I'm not going to be a high fashion model, like that's just a fact, but I have a very commercial look, I have an athletic look, I can do beauty work. And so just understanding and getting guidance from people, like other people, like, you know, telling you like, oh, this would be good for that, and understand that and accepting it, like because sometimes it's really easy to be like, oh, I'm so jealous that this girl's like shooting this or they're getting this work, and it's like, but I know my value, and it's like they're not going to look sexy in a bikini, you know, potentially. So there's just understanding your niche and accepting it. And I think that will help get you way more success than trying to fit into some mold that you're not meant to fit into.
That's like the best advice I've ever heard.
Thank you.
That. So what is like one job that you had where you were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is real life. Like, I can't believe I'm modeling for this brand.
Well, a funny one was Espolon Tequila.
Okay, fun.
Which was amazing. One of the girls I met from the pageant, she works in production, and she was like, we're doing Espolon Tequila shoot, and she was like, can you do it? This was before I was signed. And I was like, okay. And it was like a 2-day shoot. We got paid really well for like an unsigned model, and it was so much fun because it was a group shoot. So we're literally on these sets 2 days in a row with like these
pretty
two
much
dudes
partying.
literally partying. They were making us cocktails, and they were like, drink the cocktails to make it seem real.
Oh my gosh, how fun.
So that was one of my most like memorable, because it was so fun, and just like I was like drinking on the job. I was not expecting that.
Yeah. The only time it's acceptable.
Yeah. Not at my tech job. They're like, no.
Oh no. And how do you feel about social media? Like, does it help you, or do you think it kind of takes away and dilutes the industry a little bit?
I absolutely love social media when it's used correctly. And it's so funny because right before I competed at the pageant in 2022, my social media was like bland, like here's me out, like blah, blah, blah. And then I was very intentional to be like, okay, if you're going to model, you're going to do pageantry, you want to do anything in that space, even to become a content creator or influencer, you have to take it seriously. And it's great because you control your social media. You don't have to wait for a brand to select you. You don't have to wait for a brand to pay you. You can put out the content yourself. And that's way more exciting, because I take shoots all the time, like to the point where people are like, wait, are you a full-time model? I'm like, no. I'm posting this as I'm logging on to work right now.
That's crazy.
But no, I love it, because then it's another example of like your portfolio that like you wouldn't necessarily have otherwise. Like people can come find you, which is how photographers have found me, or brands, some smaller brands will find you, or how you can connect with like shows and stuff to walk in for New York Fashion Week, is all via social media. And I think it really gives the power to us, which I like.
Yeah. And now we get to talk about pageants, because you do so much more. So you've been first runner-up twice at Miss New York USA, which is like very competitive. I feel like it's more competitive than Miss Universe, because how many girls compete? Like
170, 180 each year.
Crazy to me. So first runner-up, I mean, you could win anywhere else pretty much, right? Like it's a cakewalk. So what keeps you going? I know you're going back for your third time.
Yes. Well, getting first runner up again, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, now I just really got to get this and prove anyone wrong, and really like, but also make the people who've supported me throughout this journey, like, also do it for them. Like, it's so exciting. And it was interesting because these were my first pageants ever. Like, I'd never competed before. And when I got first runner up the first time, I was like, okay, cool.
Wait, so it was your first time ever competing and you got first runner up?
Yeah.
Why did you want to compete? Like, what brought you to doing Miss New York USA?
I was on Instagram. They're like, Miss New York USA is casting for whatever.
Wow.
Which there's a number of times in my life, like, that's what's happened. Like, I've just heard something, I've seen something, and then it's changed my life, basically.
Wow.
And that was one of the instances. And I don't know any woman that hasn't seen Miss USA and been like, oh, I would love to do that. But me, I had spent my entire life focused on just sports or education. Like, I was like, I'm never going to be in that beauty realm. Like, I'm not personable. I'm not pretty. I'm not all these things that these women are showing on the stage. Like, I was like, that's just not me.
Wow.
And I also, it's expensive, and we never really had a ton of money growing up. So when I saw this, I was like, okay, like, I could fund this myself. I am fit. Like, I'm not, size 0, but I'm fit, and I have things to speak on, and I love to walk. I've always been doing my little model walk in my apartment for as long as I can remember. So I was like, here's the time to do it. And I went into it, I think, as a lot of people do, with this idea of like, it's a beauty pageant. Like, I'm just going to go out there and like try to look the best that I can. And while I prepped for my first year and I was learning more about it, and I was like, wait a second, speaking to people too and coaches, and they're like, no, like, you have a story to tell. Like, you could do really well in this. And like, that's what I was like, oh wait, I can make a change. I can use my voice to actually do something that matters versus just going there to be pretty or to get recognition. So that's what really led me the first time. I got first runner up, and all the self-doubt, like, growing up, you hear things about like, Black women aren't beautiful, and like, you're too big, or your lips are too big, your nose is too big. So like, all those like insecurities were like coming back, and I was like, oh, did I get first runner up like as a fluke? Like, were they doing this because they felt bad for me?
Oh no, not at Miss New York USA.
And so I was like, okay, so it's first runner up. I'm definitely gonna come back again. Like, that just makes sense. And I tried really hard. But I was in the same mindset of like, oh, like, maybe it was a fluke. Like, don't be upset, like, if you don't place or whatever the next year. But I had that drive. So like, I was first runner up. Like, let's do this again. Well, it was my first pageant ever. There was definitely things that were not polished. So I was like, let me fix all of that and get back into it. And getting first runner up again, I was like, okay. At first, obviously, I'm like, okay, I just put in all this time, money, energy, and just had all these people rooting for me that I just felt so disappointed. But like, the next day or day 2, I was like, wait, this was like the best thing that could have happened, because USA was in 7 weeks, and I'm only been doing this for a year and a half. And to then only have 7 weeks, like, I don't have outfits, I don't have gowns, and I wasn't as polished as I could be. So I was like, wait, they gave me the biggest push to come back the following year, because I have 1 more year to prep, I have 1 more year to polish everything off, and I have 1 more year to do all the things that I wanted to do, which is to do stuff like this podcast and continue speaking in schools and all these other things. So that's what keeps me going. I'm like, and now we got to do it, because we had some haters last time, and I was like, we're gonna prove them all wrong.
Okay, it's time. Oh, I love that. I feel like you're already like a Miss New York USA, and you're doing all these appearances like all the way in Miami.
Thank you.
I love that. So what would you do when you win the title?
I'm really excited to like hit the ground running. Like, this past year and a half have actually like been in schools, and to be able to speak to kids, and it's not just about my career in STEM and anything else, but also about like my childhood, my upbringing, and like being a woman and being like a Black woman who I never saw anyone doing any of the things that I'm doing. I've always had to forge my own path, and quite frankly, without like a lot of dysfunction going on at home. And to be where I'm at, to finally see like all of the fruit of my labor, to be able to then go show these kids and show other, even young adults, that it does get better, and if you can keep trying. And so, yeah, I want to keep talking in schools, keep going on podcasts immediately.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so share a little message with us. Like, what would you say to younger women watching right now that want to go into STEM, or they feel discouraged? Just any like word of advice for our viewers?
I think the biggest thing that we all can do is like not make ourselves victims before life has made us a victim.
Wow.
And I think by limiting ourselves from certain opportunities, by thinking, oh, I can't do this because I'm a woman, or I shouldn't do this, or I'm not going to be accepted before anyone's shown you that you're not going to be accepted, the only person you're hurting is yourself. And I'm honestly so grateful because I was such a black sheep growing up. Like, I wasn't going to fit into any boxes, that I was never afraid to enter a new space.
Wow.
And I really think that's like something that everyone should use. Like, who cares? Like, just go do it. Go try the pageant. Go try to do your STEM career. If it's not even STEM, go try to do a music career. Try to do this, that, or whatever. If you believe in yourself, 9 times out of 10, like, they'll believe in you too and give you the chance if you're willing to put in the work.
Wow. And you're like a living example of that. I love that so much. Okay, so hot topic. There's new leadership at Miss USA. And what direction do you think the pageant's going in? Because they did raise the age limit, or just got rid of it completely, right? So what do you think they're looking for in a Miss USA now?
I think, based on even just last year's competition, I think they're still looking for the same qualities. Like, you can't just be a pretty face. You can't just be about yourself. It is truly about what else can you offer and what else are you doing, which I love. And that's part of the reason that's driven me with this. If it was just the beauty thing, I don't think I'd be as, passionate about it. But they're looking for women who are beautiful, who are confident, who have a purpose and a platform that they're going to use their voice for. They're looking for someone who can use social media and is putting out great content, because that's such a huge part of so much, especially for getting sponsors for our organization and getting other people on board for what we're doing. And as far as all the changes go, I think it'll be interesting to see. We don't know. Like, this is the first year the changes are going to go into effect. And I'm interested to see what happens. I think, their big thing right now is about inclusivity for all. I just hope that that's not at the expense of, certain people's dreams. Like, if there's a ton of people at New York, there's 185 contestants.
Oh, I know. And now there's going to be like 1,000.
So exactly. So I hope it just leads to them betting more at the beginning. Like, if you can funnel it down of like, yes, we have a bigger pool of eligible people, but we're still funneling it down so it's a reasonable people competing.
Yeah.
So we all still have our time to shine if we're going to be there and investing all of our time and money. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited and to see. I'm glad we have dates now for all the states.
Yeah. How's training going?
It's good. We have our gown done, so I'm excited, and we got to get back on the fitness grind. We're keeping it up there.
Oh, but please, you look amazing. I know about the cold weather. I know we talked about that, but you're looking great right now.
Thank you.
So what do you have planned next in like your personal life?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing on the horizon right now is Miss New York USA. It's going to be at the end of June. I have my 5-year Duke reunion in April, so fun. I'm excited for that. And then, we're hoping we're going to become Miss USA. So that is,
we have to speak it into existence.
Yes.
And Miss Universe.
And Miss Universe. And then after that, my goal is, to be honest, is probably to start my own tech company at some point. That is like my long-term life goal. So
oh my gosh. Do you know like what kind of like area or?
So in college, they told us to keep a notebook. Like, if you're ever like doing something and like you're like, oh, I wish this could be improved upon. So I have like my notes app of probably like 20 ideas of just random things. So one day when I have my $1 million idea, but one of them will probably be trying to design better high heels, because I feel like we're still struggling with that.
I love that. She's an engineer, but she's still a pageant girl. We need that. Please get on that ASAP. I'll invest in that.
Thank you.
Okay, so to wrap everything up, we're going to do a fun little this or that. Okay. So you can elaborate on the answers if you want to. Okay. And the first one totally applies to you. Big city or small town?
Big city.
You got the biggest
100%,
city.
Yeah.
Pageantry or modeling?
Ooh, I'm going to go with pageantry because I love having a platform to speak. Like, I love, like, you can show up and be beautiful, but then you open your mouth and people are like, oh, wait, like, she has stuff to say and, like, we want to listen. And I think that's amazing.
I love that. Ice skating or roller skating?
Ooh. I taught myself how to ice skate a few years ago, but roller skating's fun. I love warm weather, so we're going to go with roller skating.
Okay. Phone call or texting? Or voice notes?
Oh, I don't use voice notes. People be saying, I was like, I've never used a voice note. Probably phone call if it's close friends.
Yeah.
Like a FaceTime over phone call, actually.
Okay.
and then text.
I'm like a podcaster, so my voice notes get really long. So don't talk to me. I'll get annoying. Vacation or staycation?
Vacation.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like I like New York City. I get my city life, but then I want to be on a beach.
Yeah.
On vacation. Like,
well,
no.
being signed in New York and Miami is perfect because you kind of just jump between both. Have you had any like jobs in Miami?
Well, I think they've listed me in LA, but no, I haven't gotten. I had a job in Kansas City.
Okay.
So not quite the same, but
Yeah,
like
that's not really Miami.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
Not yet, but I'm still fresh, so I'm like hopeful this is the year we can start getting some beachy shoots.
I'm sure you will. I mean, today's like the perfect day to shoot on the beach because it's not too hot.
Yes.
Miami gets hot
I
sometimes. So to wrap everything up, where can our viewers follow you and your journey to Miss USA?
Yes. On my Instagram at Zoe.McGrady. I also have a TikTok we're trying to bump up, so same handle.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.